Okay, so here's the experiment to kick off the show today. Greg Wyshynski on the other side. It is MVSW Tuesday here on the sheet. So I'm going to do a story about Dave Semenko and somehow try to relate it to the Florida Panthers. Let's see if I can get there. I told this story on the Ice Guardians documentary. So for those of you that haven't heard it, here it is. For those of you that have, I don't know, maybe pretend you haven't heard it before. So Dave Semenko... I heard this story from Marty McSorley when I used to work with Marty. So Marty goes from the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Edmonton Oilers. Does anybody remember the trade? He was traded for, I'm reaching over my right shoulder, that guy, Gilles Meloche, Edmonton-Pittsburgh deal. Anyhow, so Marty McSorley, young gunslinger, goes to the Edmonton Oilers, and all he wants to do every single game is fight. He's a young scrapper. He's in the room with Dave Semenko. This is going to be great. It's cowboy time every night. But he would get to the rink and Dave would say, we're not doing it today. Nope, we're not doing it today, Marty. And they would just play. And then the next game, Marty would be all set to do it. Nope, not doing it today, Marty. We're not doing it today. This goes on for a few games and Marty keeps saying, Dave, when are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? Dave keeps saying, not the time, not the time. Until one day, Marty says he came into the dressing room, and there was Dave Semenko, king of the jungle, taping up his wrists. And this was the quote that he said to Marty McSorley. He said, Marty, every now and then we must remind them. And tonight, we will remind them. Last night, was that the Florida Panthers reminding the NHL they might make it back to the cup again? Welcome to the sheet. Dave Semenko, by the way, one of the reasons why I loved him, he hated like classic goon talk, like, oh, I'm going to kick your ass. When that puck drops, we're going to go, and like all that crap. What Semenko would do is he would saddle up next to the winger that he wanted to fight, and he would whisper in his ear, why don't you and I go on a little canoe ride? It's MVSW Tuesday, so we're going to bring aboard our man, Greg Wyshynski, because I've got a hard out at the top of the hour, so I want to get as much Wysh in here as possible. Hello, Greg. I've got your Take Your Eye Off the Puck book over my right shoulder.
Oh, why, thank you very much. That canoe ride line, that was my pickup line in college. I don't know how it got mixed up with them.
Actually, you want to hear a little bit before. So after MVSW, the OG version, blew up, and before I started to do 32 Thoughts with Elliot, you know which pod? Vaguely familiar. So you know which pod? There was a pod. Did I ever tell you? I don't know if I ever told you this story. Do you know which pod we were working on putting together?
No.
You'll love this. It was a podcast that was going to be called Canoe Ride. And it was, hang on. I know, right? For Dave Semenko. Come on. So it was me and Chris Johnston and Tyler Dello, who's now the assistant general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, who then was writing. This is after the MC79 stuff, and he was writing for Sportsnet. And that was going to be the pod, and then 32 happened, and everybody went on their merry ways, and Tyler's in the NHL, and CJ's got about 8 jobs now. But that was before 32 happened. That was going to be the next pod that I did.
Tyler's name came up this week. I'm sure you were spying the Dom from The Athletic, Tony D'Angelo drama from over the weekend, where Dom was taking runs at him and Tony was coming back. Your classic analytics versus eye test thing.
Yeah.
And Tyler's name came up as someone who, back in the day would be the analytics guy that would proudly take on the ex-players that were saying all you said is foolish. Now, granted, the ex-player in this case was usually Colin Campbell, but it was fun to reminisce of those wild days of the early analytics movement when the battle scars that you took from the establishment were ones you wore proudly as you moved your advocates around.
There was one epic one. I was talking to Zach Phillips, our producer, earlier this afternoon about this one, where Dello was on TSN radio, might have been on Matt Cause's show, and he went toe to toe with, and good on both the guys. Like they both showed up and put on the boxing gloves, the eye test gloves, and the analytics gloves. It was Tyler Dello in the blue corner and Steve Simmons of the Sun in the red corner. And I'm telling you, like, it was, you go in there and everyone has like cheering for this guy, cheering for that guy. But by the end of it, it was pretty fascinating conversation, and good on both those guys for getting in there and putting on the boxing gloves and starting to swing. Now, one of the reasons why I want to mention your book, one of the things that I love about it, and I'm not sure where the relationship is at now, but Jeremy Roenick wrote the foreword for that one. And when we were doing the old MVSW, man, was that... Like, let
me see if I can drag this webcam into the toilet so I can get a really good representation of where my relationship with Jeremy Roenick is these days. Let me put it this way, Marek. Jeremy Roenick is doing a podcast with Tim Peel. So just to frame it perfectly as to like who's on one side of the line and who's on the other side of the line as far as the who likes Greg. I don't think Roenick and I are really swapping Christmas cards these days.
It's honestly, I pulled it out of the bookshelf. I'm like, I should have Greg's book up here out of respect. He's on every Tuesday. Let's help him move some back, some of the back catalog here. Thank you, sir. Now Tim has shifted his focus away from you and placed it square on Tyler Yaremchuk.
No, look, so the Roenick thing was a bummer for me, and I've said this before in other places, so it's not like breaking news, but like. It kind of is never meet your idols. Like Roenick was my favorite player growing up as an American kid in the 1990s. To have someone be that good and that brash and that exciting, and you know, even before the whole Swingers cameo thing from the video game, like it was awesome to be a Jeremy Roenick fan. Yeah. And then I met him, and he's kind. I mean, like the times I've interviewed him, he's kind of spent his entire time on his phone while answering questions with one sentence. The publisher I work with said we got Jeremy Roenick to write the forward. I got kind of excited. I'm like, maybe this will be the moment in which Jeremy Roenick and I can be simpatico if he writes a glowing forward to my book. And he essentially, I think, probably dictated to somebody, you know, while he was walking to his car. It was very, very sad to like have somebody that you love so much as a kid and as a player and have him turn out to be, well, everything that Jeremy Roenick turned out to be.
First rock concert I ever saw, like real rock concert, like at an arena with an opening band, was Kiss. Always loved them till I met Gene Simmons. Could not. This is what I was doing talk radio at 640. Could not have been a bigger dick. Like the worst ever in capitals. Okay, but speaking about writing things and speaking about compliments, and I want to thank you for all the nice things you said about me in the Toronto Star piece with Bruce Arthur. But I want to frame it this. First of all, thank you very much. Over the top, but thank you. I want to frame it this way. So that piece comes out, and what arrived in my inbox this morning was a message from someone who referenced a couple of times that I mentioned Timothy Leary, a guy that runs a bunch of ketamine therapy clinics.
Now, like, for those who didn't see the article, like my reference to Marek was that he's such a unique individual. Like he's such a unique talent. He has so many varied loves in life that they can't all be shared on Hockey Night in Canada radio. They can't all be shared on Sportsnet. Like you can't get on Sportsnet and start talking about foraging for mushrooms in the forest. Like you can't do it.
We did that.
And so we did, but not like you can't go on like. You know, and Ron McLean throwing to you and be like, "Now, Jeff, we'll talk about psychedelics." No, it doesn't work like that on corporate television. So my point was that it's great that you. I mean, one of the reasons why people relate to you so much is because you do have varied taste, and one of the things that you occasionally taste, I think, are probably the back of a toad's back, you know, with your tongue. But why? So, are you going to go down the ketamine road now? Is that what you've been invited into this tent?
So the thing about me and this is going to sound weird. The thing about me and ketamine. So I've only tried it once, and it was after I got a slap shot in the face.
Oh, okay.
So Sean Cullen, the comedian, great guy, wonderful comedian. So we were playing like a Saturday night beer league game, and dumb me wasn't wearing a cage, just a visor, but wearing it like old OHL style, so the visor is popped up, you know, and so it's just covering your forehead. And I get one like right here. This is why I still have like, I can't smile properly because a lot of the nerves have been damaged. Yeah, so I got a droopy smile. and a chipped tooth. I had like 30 stitches inside the nose, outside the nose. Anyway, so it's a Saturday night, and I go to St. Joseph's Hospital in the west end of Toronto, and like it's packed, like people that were in like bar fights and knife fights, and like I'm like, when it comes to triage, like it's gonna take me like 3 hours to get seen, and I'm soaking towel after towel after, and they finally get in for the needle to freeze it before it takes like 35 stitches, like to freeze it, and the freezing doesn't take. So they take me upstairs to like a surgical room, and you'll appreciate this one. The nurse says, "Well, the freezing's not taking. We're gonna have to give you ketamine." And I whipped around and said, "You're giving me Special K?" And she said, "We don't call it that at the hospital, sir." Anywho, that was the one time, but it's wow, it was.
You give me morphine, doctor? We chasing the dragon tonight, baby? Sir?
Chasing the dragon tonight? We're going down that K-hole tonight, are we?
We'll get to the hockey in a second, but like the reason the hard I don't dabble in the harder drugs and especially the psychedelics because I've lived my entire life being deathly afraid of what's lurking in here.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like while you can have wonderful experiences that expand your mind and you see the vastness of the universe, you can also have experiences where a demon emerges from the radiator. And I'm a little bit concerned that I'm going to have the latter experience if I ever dabbled.
It's for a bigger conversation. I understand that, but there is a counter argument to it depending on the intention you go into it with. But again, we're here to talk about hockey. Greg,
it took us 3 episodes for the podcast to come back properly.
Right away. Yeah, it certainly did. Okay,
hey,
I want to.
The Panthers. So let me tell you about this Panthers team. So,
okay,
one of the things that happens when you win is you stop fretting about the regular season all that much, and by that I mean the biggest Achilles heel of this Panthers team, and we saw it again last night, is goaltending. Like their goaltending's in the trash right now. Like they're both Knight and Bobrovsky are playing below expected. Their save percentages are atrocious. And what's the least thing that team worries about right now? What Bobrovsky does in the regular season. Like there are other teams that are going to be that. Yeah, I mean, Colorado just like nuked its entire crease because it didn't like the way its goaltending is going. If you ask anybody about the Panthers, hey, Bobrovsky's got like a 700 save percentage, they're going to be like, okay, great. Whatever. It's December. Yeah. You know?
And you know what? That's why in a lot of ways, I always relate this Florida Panthers team to the dynasty New York Islanders. A lot of the positions sort of overlap, and there's a lot of skill overlap. And I'll start with the goaltender. And Billy Smith's regular seasons were quite pedestrian. Thank you very much. One of the best two-way centers in Brian Trottier is now playing the role of Sasha Barkov now playing the role of Brian Trottier. Right. At a lot of different levels, this kind of is that Islanders team. But you're right, nobody cares. But as I couched it in my hastily put together intro, if we get 7 games of what we saw last night, give it to me. It was skilled. It was sloppy. It was violent. It was dangerous. It was goofy. It was the Oilers just playing an awful third period. And it was, once again, and, Jack Hughes, I don't know how much he started it, but as much as he popularized it, we now have players, again, shooting pucks at goalies' heads to score. Thank you for the RVH. Saying snipers all around the NHL. Indeed. I'm serious, dude. Give me 7 more games of that. Give me that Stanley Cup, and it could happen. Like I always think that like there's not one team that's really pulled away from the pack. I want to get to your piece at ESPN.com in a second, but there's not one team that's really distinguished itself. Like okay, this is the best team in the NHL. Clearly, no one's done that. But I always say to myself, every now and then the Florida Panthers remind us that they are that team and they still have that in them. And I'm wondering, was that last night the Edmonton Oilers, as Dave Semenko said to Marty McSorley back in, would have been 1985, tonight we're going to remind them.
Who's Dennis Potvin? Is it Ekblad or is it
I want to say Ekblad, but that's kind of where it falls apart because Ekblad's nowhere near Dennis Potvin.
And Forsling's probably better than Ekblad, if we're being honest. So here's the thing about the Panthers I've been thinking about a lot as far as their dynastic tendencies. If you were going to say the 5 most important skaters in that lineup, okay, so you got Barkov, you got Tkachuk, you've got Reinhart, you've got Bennett, and then like pick your defenseman, right? How many of those guys that I just mentioned are like the toughest SOBs in the league? and like don't put up with anything and give it out as much as they take it. The core of this team, and credit to Bill Zito for doing this, the core of this team is so playoff ready and like take no prisoners playoff ready that it's hard to imagine other teams matching up with that. Like you look at the Leafs, like the knock on the Leafs is like your core players aren't the ones don't have what it takes to carry you to victory in the playoffs. The Devils, to me, like God bless Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier. That's a lot of skill, but not a Tkachuk among them. The Florida Panthers not only have some of the most skilled guys in the league, point per game, Tkachuk. We know what Barkov does. Reinhardt scoring a goal a game, basically. But they also have guys that are built for playoff success in a way that other cores can't match up. It's incredibly impressive.
Do you recall Bill Zito's first move when he took over as GM of the Florida Panthers? I remember it specifically.
What was it?
He brought in Patrick Hornquist.
Oh, that's right, the Hornquist move, right? Yeah,
one of the most miserable, nasty, grumpy players you could play against. And I thought it was fascinating when, Paul Maurice took over and there were two Mr. Irrelevants on the same team. Paul Maurice was drafted last overall in his draft and Patrick Hornquist was drafted last overall in his. But that to me, that was the message. That was Bill Zito saying, I'm going to go out there and just bluntly, I'm going to go find the biggest bunch of pricks I can find. Like we need to be hard, like nasty to play against. And he's filled this team with them. Well, they're so miserable to play against. You just hate it. You just hate
that's
it.
The subtext, but that's the subtext of the Huberdeau trade. Like you could make the argument all day that Tkachuk's better than Huberdeau. You probably win that argument, but there's also that inherent Tkachukness that Huberdeau will never be able to attain as a player. And if you talk to the Panthers, there was that subtext to that trade of, can we win with this guy versus can we win with this other guy? And I'm not trying to besmirch Huberdeau. Like Alan Walsh, don't send the email, buddy. He's a great player. But he's not Tkachuk, and he doesn't do Tkachuk things. And that's one of the reasons that they made that trade.
Okay, speaking of Tkachuk, thought of something this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really want the Ottawa Senators to start putting out rumors about being interested in Alexis Lafreniere. Because Ottawa actually has a better record than the Rangers do. If anyone should be tampering with anybody else, it should be the Ottawa Senators tampering with the New York Rangers now. Who says no, Greg Wyshynski? Who says no?
By the way, you bring up the Rangers, and just to circle back to the analytics thing.
I'm trying hard. By the way, I'm trying really hard, just so you know, not to talk about the Rangers and not to talk about the Sabres. I just feel it's turning into like Sabre Ranger lunch.
I don't understand that. I'm going to say one thing about the Rangers. Two things about the Rangers. First of all, you want to talk about the beautiful marriage of the eye test and analytics, okay?
Sure.
Capo Caco tells Molly Walker this morning about him getting scratched. Hey, not for nothing, but I don't think I'm on the ice a lot when other teams score. You check the analytics, and it checks. It checks out. Capo Caco is completely right. Second on the team amongst all skaters in goals against per 60, second amongst forwards on the Rangers in expected goals against per 60. Capo Caco's it's not Capo Caco's fault. The man is a scapegoat. I don't care what Laviolette says. You've made an example of a guy who doesn't deserve to be made an example of. Second Rangers thing.
By the way, pause.
Yeah.
Everything's going great, everybody. Everything's awesome. Everything's fantastic. It's good. Now we have Capo Caco taking shots at the coach. Everything's going great, everybody.
The second thing is, can you remember a time in the NHL when the general manager was the villain? The general manager was the guy that all the boys in the locker room hated. Can you remember a time when the general manager lost the room? Because please hold that for a second, but like just to spell it out, the Gaudreau thing in the summer, the Trouba mess in the summer that carried over to the season where he basically Drury undercut him as captain, and then they finally shipped him out to Anaheim. The inability of the GM to make the team all that much better during the summer, like there's palpable dislike of the way the team is being managed within that Rangers room right now. And I can't remember the last time a GM lost the room, but luckily you are smarter than me and will tell me when it was.
79-80 season. Punch Imlach,
There you
general
go.
manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this is one of the first examples, by the way. I don't know if he was the first in the NHL to have a no trade, as we still have, we're still surfing on the wave of the Jacob Trouba story from not too long ago. I don't think Daryl Sittler was the first to have a no trade, but this was one of the first times we ever saw a player put his foot down and say, yeah, I've got a no trade clause in my contract. You can't trade me. Punch Imlach wanted to trade Daryl Sittler, then captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He ended up ripping the C off the sweater. And so what Punch Imlach, as he just destroyed a team that was probably 2 players away from being a legitimate cup contender, he said, okay, if I can't trade you, I'll just trade all your friends instead. Lanny McDonald off to Colorado. It was just like one after the other, after the other, after the other. It was this vendetta that Punch Imlach had against this player and took it out on all of his teammates because Daryl Sittler wouldn't waive his no trade. Historians, by the way, will tell me whether that was. I don't know if Sittler had the first, but I think it was one of the first. No trade.
Not clauses. For nothing, but are we that far away from? I'm putting Chris Kreider's name in this memo to get Mika Zibanejad going, as far as like playing the relationship card, as far as putting pressure on one guy to get another guy going.
I never thought about it that way.
Exactly.
So the GM lost the room. We've heard about coaches losing the room. You're saying the GM, there's lots of room.
Do you think Drury gets fired if they lose to the Predators? Like, is that the nadir of the season? Does he pay for that with his job if they lose to the Predators?
You know what the wild card here is.
Dolan.
Dolan. Like, could he lose it? Yeah. Normally, you would say no. You don't juice a team by firing the general manager. Like, there's no electric shock that goes into the dressing room if you fire the general manager. Is it is this different? Maybe. But general manager moves are in the off season. Coaches are generally in season because you're looking to turbocharge your team. You're looking for a sign of life. Again,
has Dolan even noticed? Is he too obsessed with the Knicks right now to even notice what's going on with the Rangers? It's like Pegula. Like Pegula watched Josh Allen basically put his name on the Super Bowl trophy, and he's like, "Oh, let me see what the Sabres are doing." Oh my God, what happened here?
I know.
Flying to Montreal.
Now, apparently, Terry Pegula always makes the Montreal trip.
Why not?
He loves going to Montreal. I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all.
Christmas time in Montreal, chef's kiss. It's so beautiful.
Hockey, old Montreal's cobblestone. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Man, I said I wasn't going to talk about the Sabres. Man, I said I was going to talk.
You just did it. No, it's my fault. I bought a Pegula. I bought a Pegula. You tried your best, and I screwed it up for you. I'm sorry. But please continue.
I should have like 2 swear jars. One for every time I say New York Rangers and one for every time I say Buffalo Sabres.
You put a Subway token in one and then a Buffalo wing in the other. By the way, I realize that we haven't used Subway tokens for at least 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm Gen X. I made a reference that is archaic.
I want to play something for you. And
Please.
This is from Morning Cup of Hockey. So Colby and Laz this morning. And by the way, the opening was fire. Colby was just like spit and dragon. It was fantastic. But they had Rick Bowness on. Rick Bowness, by the way. So whether it's Hockey Night, whether it's TNT, always a great interview. Fantastic. I know he doesn't want to do it full. I get the impression he doesn't want to do it full time. But if he ever did, like Rick Bowness would be fantastic. So anyway, here's a clip from a Cup of Morning Hockey. Morning Cup of Hockey, the Morning Cup of Hockey with Rick Bowness. I know, first day with the new tongue. I just bought a new one. Don't break it in on the new show, Marek. But there I go. It's a new tongue. It'll be fine.
Using that daily face-off money for black market organs, I see. Very exciting.
Pull some of that money off the tree in the backyard, Greg Wyshynski. You need a new agent. So here is... Here is Rick Bowness in the most labored intro of all time on Morning Cup of Hockey, talking about coaches getting fired. Here's Bones.
It's kind of becoming the NFL when it comes to NHL head coaches, the way guys are being given no time at all, really. You know, you're seeing coaches brought in for rebuilds that aren't seeing the end of their second season. The turnover seems to me to be as wild as ever. Obviously, not really your career because you had a lot of long stretches in places, but why do you think the sudden change in the way owners are clamping down, or maybe it's GMs or whatever the case may be? Because it does seem like the turnover these days, Bones, is a hell of a lot quicker than it used to be.
It's crazy. It is. Okay. So listen, you had mentioned John Cooper before.
Yeah.
So they have that fantastic year. And then they get blown out in the playoffs by Columbus. They didn't fire the coach. What they did was they changed some of the personnel on their team. They changed, I think there was 8 or 9 new players in there. When they won the cup, then 2 years later, there was, and I had only gone for 2 years, there was like 9 new players. Half the lineup had changed. So they took the approach that, okay, we've got the right coach. We got to change the way we play with the personnel. We've got to get some grittier guys in there, which they did.
Coach is saying don't fire coaches. Now, a couple of things in there that I want to sort of unpack here. So, one, I've long believed that when the hard salary cap came in 2005, it was bullseye on the coaches because it was going to become increasingly harder to make trades because now you don't have to make the players match up. You have to make the money match up in a lot of these deals as well. Salary cap leads to more coach firings. But the other point that Bones made there was 2019, and we can all recall one of the great non-goalie polls of all time. Do you remember how bad Bobrovsky was in that first period? And didn't get the hook, left them in. They end up sweeping the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Bonus says, like, yeah, they didn't fire the coach. They just shuffled out some guys at the bottom. They needed to change their mix. So that year, there were conversations, and I've had this confirmed. There were conversations between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Edmonton Oilers, and the two primaries changing Nikita Kucherov for Leon Draisaitl.
What? Stop.
That
no way.
was the conversation.
And that was Kucherov's heart year, right? But it was the year in which he completely flaked in the playoffs and got suspended.
Yeah, got suspended and got suspended.
Yeah.
That was the Now, I'm not sure how close they got. I think that Edmonton may have also wanted Anthony Cirelli, and that's when things kind of, that's not going to happen.
Cooper's like, no way, not at all.
But
you're never getting Anthony Cirelli.
It's not as if they didn't consider massive change, because that was the conversation between those two teams. Nikita can just like as a hockey fan, forget being a Oilers fan, because this is like, whoa, hold on a second. Just imagine Kucherov playing with McDavid for a second.
Insane.
Draisaitl is incredible. Draisaitl is an incredible player. I think Tampa was looking at, okay, so we go up the gut with Stamkos and Leon Draisaitl. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Thank you very much.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
But the thought about Kucherov playing alongside Connor McDavid, that is juicy, Junior. Juicy.
The thing about Cooper, though, that year was like he had multiple seasons of proof of concept before that first round flameout. Like they made the conference final at least, twice before that?
The year before,
maybe 3 times?
Year before, for sure, they went to the final. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not. I understand what Bones is saying, but like, I think Cooper had already kind of stated his case vis-a-vis, hey, let me stick around, and it ended up being the right decision. But yeah, Draisaitl over Kucherov.
Yeah, wow. Man. 2019.
You make that trade now for the Oilers?
No.
No. You know.
Jeez.
Move Nuge up to 2C.
No.
Give Connor Kucherov.
No, you know why?
Why?
This is going to sound harsher than I really intended, but if you're the Oilers, much like you're the Winnipeg Jets, you need to find players that like playing there, that like playing in cold. Like, Draisaitl is fine with that, no problem. You mentioned Jonathan Huberdeau a second ago, and he goes from being like one of the best playmakers in the NHL in Florida and loves everything about it, has like a number of convertibles, like loves the Florida lifestyle, all of it, and then you plunk him into Alberta, where it's different. That would, if I were the Oilers, that would be one of my concerns.
I think that's a really great point. And the other thing too, like you said, is like, assuming that Connor signs, which we all assume he will if Leon signed, Connor's going to sign. You've got those two guys locked in there for 7 or 8 years together, and it's their team. They take ownership of it. They're not going to be mercenaries. They are going to work together to make this thing work. And the other thing too is that usually if you're going to make a huge, like we talked about the Huberdeau Tkachuk trade, like what is the benefit to the Oilers ever trading Draisaitl? He's got that dog in him. He's a great postseason player.
Yeah,
like you don't need to swap him out for anybody who's going to be a different type of player when it counts the most, because you have that guy already in Draisaitl. But it's a fun thought exercise.
By the way, from previous in the chat, Jonathan Dumphy, Marek is soft tampering now. Only thing that I soft tamper with is the Morning Cup of Hockey chat, where I just try to get everyone to migrate over here to the afternoon
soft
program.
Tampering. Oh my God.
Okay. Let me because I want to leave some time here for you to do whatever this game show thing.
Yeah,
this game show thing.
Game show Friday.
You want to do, but we'll do it on Tuesday.
Game show Friday on Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
And it's not going to be a listener this time. We'll definitely do one later, but I'm going to quiz Marek. Okay. We should have teased that from the top. Again, you and I are both radio professionals. There will be a quiz administered from me, Quizmaster Wish, to Marek at the end of the show.
I'm going to hate this.
You will.
One of the banes of my existence is trivia. Liam McGuire is the king. You want to do trivia? Do it with Liam McGuire. That's impressive. That guy is the king.
It's a really interesting it's a really interesting quirk with you. Like, everything.
I don't like
You're part of the.
I don't like trivia.
I don't. Society of hockey historians.
No, but
you know it's all up here, but you can't seem to spit it out when you need to.
No, I know. Welcome to my brain. See preview. see top of the show conversation. Okay, I want to get to NHL Bubble Watch, projecting playoff hopes for all 32 teams. Greg Wyshynski's latest offering at ESPN.com. Look at those smiling Washington Capitals. And did we see a Stanley Cup playoff preview between Edmonton and Florida? And dare we say, did we see one between Washington and the Dallas Stars? And you and I are old enough to remember the days when we were both gleeful about the idea of a Washington Capitals Dallas Stars Stanley Cup final, when Bruce Boudreau was coaching the Caps and Lindy Ruff was coaching the Stars, and neither team cared a whit about playing defense.
And
we're like, just get these teams to the final, and then everybody will play like this. And that did not happen, because you can't get to the final playing like that.
The Stars have an 89% chance of making the playoffs. I think they probably will. I do have a couple concerns about them, though, that we should talk about real quick. One being, and again, I haven't covered them in person, so I haven't been able to ask the boys in the room about this yet myself. But my theory is that adjusting to life without Joe Pavelski has been a little bit more difficult than they imagined. Fair to say, you think?
I don't know. It wasn't as if he, like that last season, it wasn't as if he was lighting the world on fire.
No, but he was a very important veteran voice in that team. He did have good regular season numbers, and I'm specifically thinking about Wyatt Johnston having, at last count, 6 goals for them.
Well, I have a thought on that one. I think that he's out of place. I think that Wyatt Johnston belongs in a center position. The problem is Matt Duchene is having an incredible year. Where are you going to put Wyatt Johnston? The third line center? I mean, really, if anything, you're trying to find more ice time, and slowly but surely, and I think he was up to like 18 minutes last night against Washington, you want to find more minutes for Bourque. Like, it's kind of a nice problem to have. We have Wyatt Johnston, and we can't play him in his proper position because he should be a center. Much like I say, Bourque should have more minutes. But you look at, Duchene's having a freak year. Marchment's having a freak year as well.
Great.
He's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And again, like, I think we're all wondering, like, we're all cynics. We're looking at Tyler Seguin, and is this playoff game number 1?
Of course it is. But they'd be idiots not to do that with that salary cap space. And then it's a matter of how they use it. That's the real interesting thing for me, Marek, is like the idea that you go out and replace Seguin with that money with another offensive player. I don't know if they do that. To me, the biggest need for this team, and they addressed it last year with the Tanev trade at the deadline, is going out and getting the right kind of defenseman for that blue line in front of Ottinger for the playoffs. And I wonder if they end up using that salary cap space for that instead.
By the way, I know it was deflected, but Bichelle scored again yesterday, and he's like dumping Braden Shen the bench in the game against St. Louis. He's got 2 goals in the three games for the Dallas Stars. I think he only had 1 goal in like 20 games in the American Hockey League. Like, I put in my notes this week, like if Bichelle can be there now as opposed to where they expected him to be and when they expected him to arrive, then you don't have to go out there and say, like, how are we going to get Rasmus Andersson away from the Calgary Flames? Like, that it's a problem that you don't have anymore. Then all your resources are directed at bringing in the best possible forwards you can find.
In theory. The other thing about the Central that I found interesting in doing the Bubble Watch is according to Stathletes, the Utah Hockey Club has a 73% chance of making the playoffs right now. And that's exciting. That's very exciting. I want Salt Lake to taste the playoffs as early as possible. They've gotten crazy great performances out of Gunther, out of Cooley. Keller's been great. Keller should have been on Team USA, by the way. I don't know if we talked about that. Keller should have been on Team USA down the lineup. He's the kind of guy that you could say, hey, go do this assignment, and he'll do the assignment. I didn't think you necessarily had to skip over him for one of those veterans that did make the team. Sergachev, 25 minutes a night. How exciting is it to see somebody who emerge from the shadow of an all-timer like he had in Hedman next to him in Tampa and go to another team and actualize as a stud defenseman that's clearly the number one guy.
So let me ask you this question then.
Please.
How come he had such a hard time as a number 2 in Tampa, but is not having a hard time as a number 1 in Utah? That's the freak thing. That's the freak thing about me with Sergachev. Now I remember watching. I'm going to be that guy. I'm sorry. I'm going to be that guy. I remember watching him in junior with Windsor.
All right.
It was a stat. Jalen Chatfield, Sean Day was on that. Anyway, it was a really, really good blue line, and Sergachev was the class of it. I always thought that there was a first pairing defenseman in there, but then when Tampa let go of Ryan McDonough, thinking that Sergachev can just take that spot, he couldn't. So I'm scratching my head here, saying, why is this working in Utah? I don't know.
But they made the right call in getting him. And, I think that the fact that they've overcome the injuries that they've suffered, the Dursey one I thought was going to knock him out. And for a while, they kind of lost their way a little bit when he got hurt. But, having Connor Ingram fall apart and having Vejmelka rebound to become the great value goaltender that he was 2 years ago, it's just a lot of really cool things happening with this Utah team that plays a pretty exciting brand of hockey to begin with. 73% chance of making the playoffs, obviously probably through the wild card. And I thought that was higher than I expected for them.
I'm glad you mentioned Vejmelka specifically because last year you couldn't give him away.
You couldn't.
You could not give him away. And now I don't want to say he's saving their season, but he's keeping them in games. It's giving them saves. It's really hard. It's really hard to steal a game. I was mentioning this last week. I don't think you can, in a salary cap, I don't think you can expect goaltenders to steal games, but you can expect them to steal periods. And he's stolen enough periods to keep Utah in games. That's how I see it.
I disagree. I think you could say he's their MVP. With the way that Ingram played, and his record is actually pretty okay, but his underlying numbers and his traditional stats are also garbage. They would have been up the creek without having Vejmelka play as well as he has this season. They didn't have another option, really. I think he's been fantastic for them.
Okay, real quick, because we're going to park time with this game show thingy here in about 5 or 6 minutes. What else caught your eye? And by the way, I really, really wanted Columbus to be good this year. I think we all did. We all wanted Columbus to be good. 82 games is a real tough way to remind you how good you are or how bad you are.
Yeah. Should we be worried about Fantilli?
So I was having that conversation with someone the other day. From a skill point of view, no. But are we seeing that high-end hockey sense is what this person, this is an NHL person, pointed out to me because we're talking about him and other people from his draft class. From a skill point of view, guy's loaded with skill. Does he have the hockey sense to go with it? I always kick myself when I say that because kid's so young, but I'm not ready to have that conversation about Fantilli yet. Put it this way. It's noteworthy, but not alarming. How about that?
Is the difference between him and Macklin the Celebrini hockey sense then, would you say?
Oh man, honestly, right now, Celebrini, he's come in and not that he's I'm trying to think who is the last first overall pick that's better than Celebrini?
Hold up, wait a second. Are you saying that he's better than Bedard?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Oh man, this is spicy.
Don't you think so?
Why do you think he's better than Bedard? Because he plays.
It's a tiny sample. And right now, the recency bias is, we've watched Connor Bedard struggle to kick off his second campaign. So let me see Macklin Celebrini get through a season and get through that grind and then wind it up again for a second season. But who's been the more impressive player to you this season, Macklin Celebrini?
This season, Celebrini, easy. Yeah, I think
That's what
easy.
we've
But I
seen.
also
And
think that his team is better than Chicago's.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Boy, I don't think it's outlandish to say that Celebrini could be better than Bedard.
So
I just find it real. But hold on, I just find it really interesting that we can pass that verdict after the way that the league approached both of those guys. Like Bedard was clearly like, tank hard for Bedard. Like he was on that level of a McDavid where you felt like you had to get this guy in order to resurrect your franchise. I don't think Celebrini was certainly a prize at the end of the rainbow for sure, but not necessarily in we've got to restructure our roster to make sure we get this guy, although Mike Rear did a hell of a job of doing it. I just think the approach and the pre-draft notions of both of these players was very different. But I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that when you watch Celebrini, he's a lot closer to a Matthews type than Connor Bedard is to, say, a McDavid type.
I can hear people already saying he's not better than Jack Hughes. From the question I throw out there, like which first overall pick is better than like the last first overall pick who wasn't as good as or who was better than Macklin Celebrini. I know a lot are going to say 2019 Jack Hughes, very good. I see you. I get it. I know that. Austin Matthews in the Buffalo draft, certainly. But really, and again, we're doing this like 25 games into this guy's career, but honestly, I love watching San Jose Sharks games. I can't believe that here I am saying this, but I love watching San Jose Sharks games, and the biggest reason is Macklin Celebrini.
The thing I'll say about Jack is
something.
Jack has gotten so much better defensively since his early years, and I give Lindy Ruff a lot of credit for that to make him a fully formed player.
You can give some Nico Hischier some credit.
I give Nico Hischier some credit for that too.
I'm barking about him since Halifax.
But I also give Sheldon Keefe credit too. I mean, trotting out Jack Hughes on the penalty kill did not start happening until Sheldon got there. And you know who's a really good penalty killer? Jack Hughes. So I guess in Celebrini's case, like he's on the way. I do think that Hughes, if they both actualize at their apex, I think I'd probably take Hughes, to be honest with you. But and that means I probably take him over Bedard too. Man, you really knocked me on my ass about that Bedard comment because I've been thinking very much about who's had the better season. But like when you think about Bedard and the Bedard of it all, Bedard hoisting the Chicago Blackhawks on his shoulders like Atlas and resurrecting the franchise versus Celebrini, like you don't. Yeah. It didn't even occur to me that that Celebrini could be better than Bedard because Bedard's been built up so much.
Yep. 100%. But again, like I'm doing this after 30 games, 25, 30 games. But still, I'm just like every single night, I'm impressed at Macklin Celebrini. I think we all are. Before, anyone stays up and watches San Jose games. Okay, give me a couple more so we can get in this game show thingy. That's going to be as big a disaster as my hair right now. Holy smokes!
I wanted to just mention one more team, which is. By the way, I actually think my hair's on point today. Like I'm wearing
your hair looks good.
the cans. Mine's kind of like spiked up. It almost looks like devil horns.
Devilish.
Not
no,
my intention.
You look devilish. I look like the Kraft peanut butter bear. That's what my hair looks like right now.
I kind of like a little bit comic accurate Wolverine too. The New York Islanders are one I struggled with because like I felt, based on their playoff probabilities, and again, these are generated by the Stathletes model, 5.8% chance of making the playoffs. But that being said, I can't call them a long shot because they're just becoming the Islanders now. Like to be where they are without Barzal, to have missed Pelech for as long as they have, to have missed Duclair for as long as they have, I don't think that we can give the Islanders really anything insofar as finality on what they're going to be this season without seeing what they are with all these guys healthy. And when they're all healthy, Marek, do you think the Islanders are a playoff team?
If they have the elite tandem of Sorokin and Varlamov. Otherwise,
Varley's
I don't.
Bad.
He's been
Varley's
awful.
Not been good.
He's been awful. Here's my question.
Yeah,
and I think we've been wondering this for maybe a couple of years. How do they do it with Lou? And by that I mean, how do they move away and move someone into that spot?
Well, obviously,
my thought
he's
on it,
he's going to make the decision, right?
I don't
You
know
think
about
that
I don't know about that. But I'm saying, like, if you've made that decision on Lou, how do you approach him about it, and then how do you put together a plan to do it? First of all, it's the Islanders, and it's Lou, so everything will be done quietly. But at what point do you say, okay, we're at the end here with this team construction and this team, we need to start changing things, and we need to start to bring in new ideas.
Here's my question.
How do you do that?
Because
normally it's other GMs just like punt, but with Lou, this one, considering his place in the game and the history of hockey, et cetera, has to be done a little more carefully.
Oh, do you mean they might have trouble getting rid of the general manager who helped design their new arena? Do you know that, Eric? Like Lou had input on the blueprints for this place insofar as what he wanted the locker room area to look like. Like he helped build, not like brick by brick, although I wouldn't put it past him, but he had input on what he wanted the UBS arena to look like. Now, here's the question. Chris Lamoriello is still the assistant general manager there, I imagine, right? I think he's still with the Islanders. If so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if so, does this become a Belichickian deal when Lou was hired? Like, does he pass the torch to Chris?
I don't know.
To be the general manager? Is that what the Islanders had to do to get him to run the team? I don't know.
It is the most like buttoned down, locked up organization. So all we'd be doing is throwing darts. I don't know. Like pick, sure, I guess. I mean, pick your theories about anything. Your conspiracy theories. Did they put a contract in a drawer for John Tavares for giving up the seat? I don't know. They have an agreement with. I don't know. Okay, a couple of things, really quick.
Yeah.
Kishore Hari, by the way, our old friend from the old pod. You approach Lou with a mustache to get his attention.
And he's like, "Era, shave that." And the minute he's looking the other way, you just move his desk into the hallway. I like it.
Poll, by the way, at our chat. Who's a better player, Celebrini, Bedard? What do you think the chat's saying?
Bedard, right?
Celebrini 67%, Bedard 33%. Wow. I'm telling you, man.
You really tapped a vein here. The people aren't talking about this. This is why you are who you are. You are leading the charge on the conversation in this sport that no one is having.
So no, I expect a 2,500 word think piece on ESPN.com first thing Friday morning from G. Wyshynski on Macklin Celebrini versus Connor Bedard. I mean,
that's cute.
This is just show prep for you. Just like how the morning show with Colby and Laz is my show prep for this program. Yeah. This program is just going to be article prep for you.
It's cute that you don't think it's going to be Mark Lazarus at The Athletic refuting the fact that Celebrini's with Bedard, or confirming it and then using that as a takeout piece on Bedard. Real quick, I wanted to mention the Leafs.
Okay.
Anthony Stolarz has played 28 games in a season. That's his career high. And Joseph Wall has played 25.
Stolarz
25 games. Okay, but here's my point.
He's
28 games is his career high for a season. And Joseph Wall's career high for a season is 25 games.
Are you asking if he should get the Vezina?
No, I'm saying both have already been on IR, and that the fear that we all had about this being a house of cards for the Toronto Maple Leafs, their goaltending, is still a creeping fear, and maybe even a more prominent one. Again, if both those guys are healthy, I agree with Sheldon Keefe. They might have the best goaltending in the league. They're both great. Totally. But the issue has always been keeping those guys in the lineup, and right now Stolarz is out 4 to 6 weeks. I hope that is not a sign of things to come for our beautiful Leaf boys.
Yes. They've enjoyed legitimate goaltending for a little while now. That's not something that Maple Leafs fans are accustomed to. That's why this one really stings for them. Okay. We got about a Dixie left. 10 minutes. Here we go. So what is this? What is this game show you're proposing and does Zach have any fancy music prepared for it?
Well, here we go. It's Game Show Friday on Tuesday on Marek versus Wyshynski. As you know, we used to play Game Show Friday all the time. It's a game that I invent, and then usually would have the callers play the game. But this time it's going to be you, Jeff Merrick.
And I would be grumpy while you did it. I would be grouchy.
That's right. You're very grumpy. Oh, who likes? I don't like people. The game we're going to play today is called. It's a game called Real Team or Fake Scheme. It is a game, Jeff Merrick, in which I will give you the name of a hockey team, courtesy of Hockey Database in some cases.
Okay.
And you tell me if this hockey team that I'm telling you about ever existed. So it's either a real team, one that actually played hockey on a professional or minor league level, or it is a fake scheme, a team that I've invented to torment you. Yes.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. Give it a shot.
So let's start with an easy one, okay? These are going to be 5 questions.
Okay.
You get 3 questions and you win the prize, which we've already established will never be sent to you because neither one of us ever go to the post office. That's right. Okay. Are the Philadelphia Knockouts a real team or a fake scheme, Jeff Merrick?
I'm going to say the Philadelphia Knockouts are a fake scheme.
You are correct. The Philadelphia Knockouts are, in fact, a fake scheme. Thought I could get you with the Rocky reference. There was a team called the Philadelphia Sting of Major League Roller Hockey from 1996 to 1998. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's the closest we came to a Philadelphia team with a boxing reference. So you are 1 for 1.
Ooh.
In
can I retire on top?
Do
I have to do? Can I just retire
no,
on top? Like
we've got
just like JD Salinger writes Catcher in the Rye, and then that's it. Like I'm done. Like that's it. No more. I wrote my beautiful book, and
he did write a few other things besides Catcher in the Rye.
Did he write more? Oh, Franny and Zooey. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Franny and Zooey. I think you'll read that. Okay. Very well. Number 2. Are the Duluth Puffins a real team or a fake scheme, Jeff Merrick?
I really want it to be real. So I'm going to say it's real. The Duluth Puffins? Yeah, I'll go with real because I want it to be real.
Well, wants are a good thing to have in life. But unfortunately, in this case, it is a fake scheme. I asked my wife Ruby to come up with a city name and an absurd mascot. She pulled out Duluth, Minnesota, and the puffin, a seabird that feeds primarily by diving into the water. She will be delighted, Ruby will be, to hear that she has fooled Jeff Merrick with the Duluth Puffins.
I saw a fake scheme. Last time I was at Clayoquot Sound in BC. We took a little Zodiac, saw this amazing 80-foot gray whale, but about a bajillion puffins along the way too. So whenever I hear puffins, I think of Clayoquot Sound and the hot springs and 80-foot whales and BC and the island. Anyway,
and so as Jeff mentioned, he's taking ketamine. Number 3.
I've only did it. It was once, and it was for a cut. Your Honor.
Number 3. Are the Idaho Falls Spud Kings a real team or a fake scheme, Jeff Merrick? The Idaho Falls Spud Kings. Spud is in potatoes, found in Idaho in the United States.
Everyone from PEI's nickname was always Spud, except for Rick Vive, whose nickname was Squid, because John Brophy, his coach, forgot that everyone from PEI's nickname is Spud and thought it was Squid. And so that's how Rick Vive got his nickname. Because
there it is.
PEI potatoes. I'm going to say no, fake scheme.
That's a real team. They currently play
where
in the United States Premier Hockey League in the National Collegiate Development Conference. The Idaho Spud Kings are a real team. So now
for how long? How much do we know about these Spud Kings? Greg Wyshynski.
Well, they're playing currently. They might only be around for a couple of years, but that doesn't mean that they're fake. A couple of years is in fact a real team. Okay, so you're one.
I'm already getting a text from the marketing director now and the communications director from the Spud Kings. You know what? All I got to do is get them wrong, and then I'm going to get T-shirts and hats. I'm going to have to wear them on the show in shame, and I probably will. So I'll expect
now I want to point out
to show up first thing Monday.
For those of that'd be fantastic. For those of you who remember Game Show Friday, this is what we like to call the spiral. He's gotten 2 wrong in a row. This is usually where people kind of fall off a cliff playing these games. You have to run the table in order to win the game. Let's see if you can do it.
Okay.
Jeff Merrick, Question 4: Are the Hollywood Sheiks a real team or a fake scheme?
Hollywood used to have, because Bill Barilko played there. I want to say it's a real team.
Wow. You are correct. The Hollywood Sheiks are a real team that played in the California Intercity Hockey League in 1934 and 1935. But Marek, you might know them better as the Hollywood Millionaires, which was their name before becoming the Hollywood Sheiks.
There were, I guess, like before, there were specific affiliations with other teams. There were a lot of, and I mentioned Bill Barilko a second ago. There were a lot of players that Toronto had that ended up playing in Hollywood. That's why, and trust me, I didn't know that. I just threw a dart at that one and said, "Yeah, it sounds good enough." So now this is it. Like,
this is it. This is
I'm
I
winning
don't,
or
I
I'm
don't,
losing.
this is unplanned.
It's come right down to the end.
It's game show karma that we come down to. Game 7. Marek is literally the Edmonton Oilers rallying from a hole that it looked like not climb out of. We've gotten to Game 7.
Might flame
Let's
out
see if
here,
he's got
folks.
Yeah,
okay.
He's either going to be hoisting the cup or crying in the locker room and refusing to accept the Conn Smythe trophy. Jeff Marek, question 5. Question 5. Are the Torontos a real team or a fake scheme?
I almost thought it said Toronto Tontos, and you were just going with a Max Webster reference.
The Toronto Toros famously were the WHL team. These are the Toronto Torontos. Toronto Torontos.
I have never heard of the Toronto
real
Torontos.
team or a fake scheme?
I'm going to go fake scheme
Well, that
on
can
that
indicate
one.
a lot of things.
I'm going to go
the Toronto Torontos fake scheme. Jeff Marek. The Toronto Torontos are in fact a real team. They were an Ontario Hockey Association Senior A team from 1932 to 2007, according to Hockey DB. Again, if they're in Hockey DB, they are eligible to be part of this game. The Toronto Torontos.
Who played for them? Who played for them? The Toronto Torontos. And who came up with the name? Give me one name of anybody who may have glanced by the Toronto Torontos.
Here, Bobby Orr played for the Toronto Torontos in 1960. I don't know. Don't play
for Toronto Torontos.
Think about the beauty of that name.
You know what?
When you think about the center of the hockey universe, the abject hubris that people in Toronto have about their hockey, to name a team the Toronto Torontos is the apex of the Toronto hockey hubris.
Do you remember Chipwich? Remember Chipwich sandwiches, like those cookies with the ice cream?
Absolutely.
You know what always bugged me?
What?
Chocolate Chipwich. It was so smug. How much more chocolatey could I be?
Well, there you go. That's
the smuggest snack of all time. That's like the Toronto Torontos. That's like chocolate Chipwich to me. The smuggest ice cream treat of all time. Well, bravo. You know what I thought?
When we get around,
by the way, you know what I thought you were going to hit me with for sure? I'm like, okay, so he's going to do teams. I'm getting the making whooppies for sure. And I'm going to nail it.
I know you, and I know exactly where to go with this stuff. I will just say this. There's a lot of expansion money out there. We could certainly support 2 teams in Toronto. I'm saying if we do decide to put one in the Western Conference, the Toronto Torontos, rally people to the cause. You are not a Leafs fan. You're a citizen of Toronto. And what better team to support than the Toronto Torontos if you're a citizen of Toronto?
What a great way to end. Thank you, Greg. I'm glad that I lost on Game Show Friday, which is the same as winning on Game Show Friday because the prize is identical.
It's nothing. It's
you get
prize
on this show. Now, write this down, everybody. You get 2/3 of the square root of sweet F all. That's what we're offering you here on this program. 2/3 of the square root of FSA. Of SFA, rather. Okay. Done with you for the week. Again, thank you for the kind words earlier with the Toronto Star piece with Bruce Arthur.
Oh, my pleasure.
And we will talk to you in 7 days, my good friend. Check out Greg's latest, by the way, at ESPN. It's Bubble Watch, projecting playoff hopes for all 32 teams.
Yeah.
When you by the way, when you see the Capitals jersey, by the way, who is that in the middle? It looks like John Erskine. Looks like an old picture. It was John Carlson, but it looks like John Erskine, doesn't it? It's John. I know it's John Carlson, but it looks like John Erskine. The face, no? Big old tough defenseman?
Slowly morphing into John Erskine. When I see those Capitals jerseys, I say to myself that I could use a rebrand. I'm more of a Screaming Eagle guy, to be honest with you, than the Capitals. I think they're one of their outdoor jerseys they've had like in the recent years was maybe one of my favorites. But 50th anniversary for the Caps this year. What a better way to cap it, Marek, than not only with Ovechkin breaking the Gretzky record, but with the Capitals winning the Stanley Cup. Wouldn't that be amazing for their 50th anniversary season?
Playing against the Dallas Stars. We'll get that dream matchup that you and I fantasized about back in 2015. We'll get it sometime later. All right, off with you. You be good. We'll talk to you in 7 days, Wysh. There he is from ESPN.com, the one and only Greg Wyshynski. I want to remind you as well as we sign off today. First of all, thanks for everyone in the chat today. It was exceptional as always. I want to mention Up Close with Stephen Brunt. That dropped today, the first show, Stephen's 6-part podcast series. I don't know that I'm allowed to say who the other interviews are, but if you know anything about my broadcasting background and what I used to be really interested in and still sort of interested in from a historical point of view, you're going to find one of his guests fascinating. That's on the horizon. But the latest one, a fascinating interview with MLSE CEO Keith Pelly, one of the people that hired me back in 2011. Thanks, Keith. On behalf of Zach Phillips, everybody here at the Nation Network and The Sheet and Daily Faceoff, thanks for checking out the program today. Thanks for being as lively as you are in the chat. It is very, very much appreciated. And as Zach always reminds me, ask them to hit the like button. So it's important if you hit the like button, and we'll really appreciate it. And we'll give you the same prize that we give out here for Game Show Tuesdays. Again, 2/3 of the square root of SFA. That's what we offer you here. Back tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.